it is time for a conversation wrapped around faith and finance and led by the one, the only Drew Blazsik. Good morning and welcome to it, Drew. So many things to talk about. Big things have happened since the last time we were in discussion. Good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, I was just talking to Ron. You know, it's kind of foggy outside, and our brain is kind of foggy in the morning. So trying to get my a lot going on, and you got to wrap your mind around everything that's going on. But I got some. I was kind of looking this up last night, kind of give some like economic news right here. So what's kind of interesting, Bitcoin. A while back when it hit its surge, I think it hit like 122,000 per Bitcoin. It dropped, and now it's at around. It kind of went up the last few days. It's at around 71 since last night. Gold is still pretty high, $5,100 for an ounce of gold, which is very high. I mean, not that long ago, a few years back, it was only it was 2,000 for many years per ounce. Silver is at 84. Which is important. I remember we had one segment about silver, how if it hit 40, that was that was pretty bad. But then it jumped up to well over 100, around 115, and then it dropped, which was crazy. If you look at the graph of silver, you just see this decline, massive decline. And then the Dow is 47,000. It's under the 50,000 mark. And then the NASDAQ is at 22. A couple other things. So one thing that people were trying to look at was the unemployment rate. Everyone's predicting recessions around the corner, all this stuff. Unemployment's at 4.3. What's tricky about unemployment is just it depends on how they calculate it. Yeah. So whoever is in office, they have an incentive to make sure that unemployment number is low.
Right.
And so that can be kind of tricky. And if people have to understand how that works with unemployment, that if you quit looking for work, you're not counted anymore. So the ones who don't have jobs, the government, whoever's in power, would rather have you not report.
Right.
Or they would rather just have you give up. So I forgot what it was, 13 weeks. I can't remember exactly what it was.
13 weeks.
That if you haven't done it, look for a job. If you haven't looked for a job, actively looking, they don't count that part of it.
My goodness.
Now, oil prices. Have kind of risen. Europe, I heard it went up 50% in some places. The average price in the United States is about $3.25, and Ohio is a little lower, about $3.12. And that kind of leads us to... there's a lot of economic concern. So we had the war in Russia in the Ukraine that at the time when it happened, you have to think about how did that affect our economy? Well, at the time, the Biden administration, remember, we talked about this before, how they used the dollar as a weapon to sanction Russia. And I forgot the exact numbers on this, but they said like 71% of the trade of Russia was used with U.S. dollars, and then they went away from it. Now they're using I think under 20 or 15%. At the time, it really did hurt them. And then prices, if you guys remember that, it went up to like $5 a gallon.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, remember the pipeline exploded, and there's that controversy. Right. It looks like the CIA probably did it.
That, right.
That would have jacked up prices, but the main reason why we had prices that went up because of sanctions and the dollar. And then when Russia and other countries went away from the dollar, you had the BRICS nations that are trying to team up to have their own reserve currency. That really devalued the dollar, and that was kind of an impact. Now this war is much different. I think is that we are directly involved in the Ukraine war as well. I mean, we're funding the Ukraine war, but this one's a bit different because you have the Strait of Hormuz. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a checkpoint, and Iran's not letting any oil through. And roughly 20% of global oil supply moves through that.
Right.
So I don't think we even in the U.S. we don't get our oil from Iran, and the largest one who does is China.
Right.
China gets tons of oil from Iran, and if you want to think about what impact would that have, is that would cause it's a global economy. Eventually, prices will rise in the United States, I think. Right. But I think more of a larger concern is how much involved would China be in Iran? Do they feel like this is a threat to their economy? And we don't know what's going on. If you guys ever heard, we talked about fog outside, the fog of war. Everything we are getting from all sides is probably not true. Right. Because it's a propaganda war on all sides because you need support of your people if you're involved in the war or you're in the actual the conflict itself. So we don't really know what's going on, I think, with that. And we don't know how involved China is. I don't think Russia necessarily gets oil from Iran because Russia has their own oil. They're a pretty large supplier on that. But
now, war generally is usually a boost in economy, doesn't it? Is war good for the economy?
Well, I mean,
it depends.
I think companies who are involved in it love it. But you can expect a bunch of things. You can expect prices to go up. You expect inflation to go up. I bet that national debt's going to hit that 40 million really quick now.
Oh my gosh!
Because we're getting close to 40 million, which 40 million, 40 trillion.
Don't we wish? 40
million being
that's
manageable.
A millisecond right there, every millisecond.
But there's a lot of you always heard that thing about World War II about how that really helped the economy. World War II going in there, and I don't know how much. There's other people that did some research on it saying that our recession or our depression was prolonged by the government, and it was on the way out. It just took longer, but I don't know if that's necessarily true or not. But I know the ones who are involved appreciate it because they get a lot of the government subsidies and all the money coming in flowing to them first. And you got to think about how that works is once money flows in, the first movers, the ones who receive it first, benefit the most, and then once the money trickles down to parts of the economy, that's when prices go up. And then once it gets to the average folks like us, we could say that there's no real impact because hey, okay, you're making more money, but so I mean, there's a lot involved. We don't know what's going to happen with that, but I think the biggest and keep an eye on it is China because China gets a large amounts. And I looked it up. What the reason why they get it from Iran? There's sanctions on Iran, and Iran sells it to them for $5 to $10 cheaper per barrel. Therefore, they get a deal from Iran. So China might feel like this is a big threat to them. So it's going to be very interesting to see how how China responds.
And we're already seeing them, talking harshly about it.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, a couple. Yeah, China has come out and said some things.
And regardless of the messaging around war from governments here, there, or anywhere, what is going on behind the scenes is always something that we're not going to know about. And to your point, Drew, countries like China that are not at this point directly involved, they're involved. We just don't know what their involvement is, particularly when you have an economic connection to Iran, and now you're being impacted. So we'll wait to see what those results are.
They're definitely behind the scenes. I think China doesn't think about the short term. They think of the long run. China is really thinking about how they can get global dominance. They don't think about, I would say, as much as we think of that. It's an interesting stat. If I had to ask you guys this, what's the last time do you think China had a war?
The last time China itself was involved, committed war, you're talking about, hundreds of years ago? Well,
I think they said last conflict.
The 40s.
I think this is now, of course, I heard on the podcast, so you guys might be right on this.
Yeah.
I heard 79. What's kind of interesting.
Okay.
We gotta look that up just to double check.
Yeah.
Well, I trust you more than us. That's
it was a podcast I heard. I thought it was kind of interesting, but I think they try to stay out of things typically, and they're thinking long term.
Behind the scenes,
but they're behind the scenes, and we don't know exactly what's going on with that. But
look, the big thing is, and we talked about it every week here, is how does all of this affect interest rates? Because interest rates then affect how much we're paying on our debt, and then that is the big issue for us.
When debt rolls over, if interest rates go up, and it does cause interest rates to go up, you're going to see a massive a race to 50 trillion pretty quick.
Right. So that's the line to look at. Interest rates, if they go up, then all of a sudden our payment on our debt goes up and becomes difficult to manage. Obviously, there are things wrapped around war that are far more important than the economic side, but we're talking about the economic side on this segment. So that's why we've stayed to that.
Good stuff, Drew. You ought to consider teaching finance. Wait a minute, you do.
They will.
Drew Blazsik, ladies and gentlemen. Little faith in finance